Good afternoon. My name is Yawei Luo from Xiamen University. Today it's my great honor to convene this special launch session for the new UN Decade project, COASTAL-SOS. I also take this opportunity to represent all the partners of the COASTAL-SOS to thank the WESTPAC to provide this very good platform. It's very efficiently organized. And COASTAL-SOS stands for coastal zones under intensifying human activities and the changing climate, a regional program integrating science, management, and society to support ocean sustainability. It had just been endorsed by the UN Decade last month. So the COASTAL-SOS project articulates a novel approach of cross-sectoral partnership among 10 academic institutions, 3 foundations, 6 enterprises, 2 intergovernmental organizations, and 2 non-governmental organizations in designing, conducting, and delivering the science we need for the ocean we want. Through interdisciplinary research, the project aims to efficiently integrating science, government, and society to create a sustainable development model of the coastal zone. So let me to introduce our speakers. So today we'll have 5 talks, 1 virtual launch ceremony, and a roundtable dialogue. And so the first speaker will be Minghan Dai from Xiamen University. And then we'll have Professor Fei Cai from Second Institute of Oceanography, Ministry of Natural Resources of China. And the third will be the Professor Dabo Guan from Tsinghua University. And then we'll have Simon Benet from the China Delegation, Singapore. And then we'll have Mr. Ma Jian from the Paradise International Foundation. So after those talks, we'll have the virtual ceremony for the launch session. And then Professor Gray Williams from University of Hong Kong will chair the roundtable dialogues. And at that time, then Professor Williams will introduce his panelists. So first, let's welcome our first speaker, Professor Minghan Dai. He will give an overview introduction to COASTAL-SOS.
Let me share the screen. Thank you, Yawei. Let me share the screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes. Hi, Minghan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi.
Sorry, I started. To start, I just want to thank IOC-WESTPAC to organize this fantastic platform to kick off the regional UN Decade activity. So I'm going to give this overview of this COASTAL-SOS project. Stands for Coastal Zone and intensify human activities and changing climate. A regional program integrate science, management, and society to support ocean sustainability. As Yawei introduced, this is a UN Decade endorsed project. I hope I'm impressing you with all these logos. At least in my life, I haven't done so with so many sector partners, cross the sector partners within one research project. So I'm showing here the 4 list of the partner of the COASTAL-SOS from academic institution, including Xiamen University, of course, I'm in this belong to, and Second Institute of Oceanography, Department of Earth Science, Tsinghua University, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, State Key Laboratory of Marine Pollution, City University of Hong Kong, the Swan Institute of Marine Science, the University of Hong Kong, Marine and Coastal Resource Research Development Institute, Department of Marine Coastal Resources in Thailand, and China ASEAN College Marine Science, Xiamen University, Malaysia, Institute of Ocean and Earth Science, University Malaya, and the Institute of Oceanography and the Environment, University Malaya, Tengku Garu, again in Malaysia. And also, we are very honored to have 3 foundations from China Oceanic Development Foundation, Paradise International Foundation, the Swine Group Charitable Trust. And very importantly, from the design of this research project, we bring in this industry sector, including China Navigation, the CP Group based in China, the headquarters in Thailand, JV Aquatic Resources in Malaysia, Liantai Group, and the Zhongtian Technology Marine System, and ZPMC Maritime Fuzhou Construction. And also we have intergovernmental organization, IOC-WESTPAC, PAMC, and the non-governmental organization, including Surface Ocean Lower Atmosphere Study, that's the international project, and the World WWF Beijing. So again, this is one of the key, as I said, the partner is one of the key of this Coastal SOS program. So this will give you the overview of this project. And through co-design, again, through the beginning of this research project design, we engage from the very beginning. It's a co-design in nature from multiple sectors. And then we're still doing the science through the integration of natural and the social science, looking at the coastal ecosystem health. And hopefully we can deliver the outcome of the science research through this novel cross-sector partnership, using the observation network, data, coupled numerical modeling system, and eventually we'll provide the toolbox supporting decision-making. This is the context of this project, the ocean. We all know the ocean and the human are closely linked. And if you want, 90% of the shipping route is through the ocean, and 50% of the population reside in the coastline. And I'm here showing these 7 literature of the ocean. One is the Earth has a big ocean with many features. The ocean makes us habitable, produce 50% oxygen, for example. The ocean and the life in the ocean shape the future of the Earth. The ocean is a major influence on weather and the climate. The ocean supports a great diversity of life and the ecosystem. The ocean remains largely unexplored. So I'm trying to say that the Earth needs the ocean as life needs water. This was a big concept. And then we zoom in the coastal system, and I put the Chinese character here, crossing, linking the atmosphere, lithosphere, hydrosphere, and the biosphere. And all these converge in this coast zone. This is a very special region featuring ocean, sea, land, and atmosphere interaction with very complex interface, abundant natural resources, fragile ecological environment, intensify human activity. You name it, importance in reservoir biodiversity or marine primary productivity or fish catch, all relies on the coastal zone. However, these coastal zones are under great pressure, both from the human population growth and the human activity. I give one example of the global fertilizer usage consumption in the waterland that put the pressure into the coastal zone, causing a lot of issues. And this human driver is amplified by global climate change, and showing here the ocean warming, deoxygenation, ocean acidification, extreme weather, sea ice melting, sea level rise, etc. We all know, are very familiar with those global climate change symptoms. A big question actually we are facing, or the ocean is facing, if we are reaching the tipping point of no return. And at least the sum of the symptom looks like is past the point of the no return. That was one of the major reasons that ocean received the global political concerns and become one of the three major concerns on the UN level or at the individual governmental bodies. And I'm showing here, including SDG 2030 or World Economic Forum or High Level Panel for Sustainable Ocean Economy. They all now has paid great attention on the ocean issues and the solution. That's probably one of the contexts where the theme of this conference, WESTPAC UN Decade Kickoff Conference, and the vision we are all very familiar, the science we need for the ocean we want. The outcome, we expect a clean, healthy, resilient, predict ocean, a safe ocean, a sustainable, productive ocean, transparent and successful ocean, and an inspiring, finally, and engaging ocean. So the coastal SOS focus on the East Asia seas. We all know it's a big 7 million square kilometers, fed by world's largest, the longest river such as Yangtze and the Mekong River, and support 20% of the world population. It's a place provide major seafood, and it's a world largest expanses of coral reef, mangrove, and seagrasses. Coastal SOS picked 6 model coastal system from Pearl River estuary, Changjiang, Gulf Thailand, Minjiang, Xiamen Sea area, and the Johor Strait. And I just give one example to elaborate a little bit what's the drivers here. One of the main drivers is fertilizer. I would term it an invisible pollution has caused eutrophication in coastal oceans. And you see it, fertilizer consumption, all these river watershed, then you see the nutrient concentration increase during the last 40, 50 years. And including now expanding into East Asia, give one example, all the data set is still small, but you start to see the trend, okay? From Central Europe, America, now East Asia, and then now South Asia, probably next step would be Africa. And those eutrophication has caused a series of ecological consequences, including hypoxia, HAB, harmful algal bloom. And I just give you one example here in the East China Sea of Shanghai, the hypoxia area observed in 2016 reached 20,000 square kilometers. It's 3 times the area of the Shanghai city and has become one of the largest seasonal hypoxia zone in the world. So in those contexts, the research framework of the coastal SOS, including we're looking at both the stressor from climate change and the pollution in the context of the economic development in the region. And then I will align carbon footprint and the nutrient footprint as the 2 chain research lines, and then looking at the ecosystem resilience and the societal sustainability. Of course, we need data, modeling, and eventually digital twin ocean to support this research framework, deliver the policy tools. So this is the question we are asking based on this project. What are the key physical, biogeochemical, and the social economic process governing the dynamic and consequence of coastal ocean eutrophication and climate change in river estuary shelf system, and how are they coupled and interacted? So we're going to assess what's the historical key environment drivers and the management policy that have led to the current state of different model coastal system during the past 50 years. And then we'll attribute how are the key physical, biogeochemical, and the socioeconomic process coupled and interacted in governing the dynamic and the consequence of coastal ocean eutrophication and the climate change in this river estuary shelf system. And then we're doing the simulation and the prediction to check what are the future change trends of the coastal system in the next 30 years. How was it changed across feedbacks to the socio-economic system? The objective of this coastal OS is include the novel formulate a novel cross-sector partnership among academic, industrial, non-governmental, intergovernmental, and the governmental sector with optimal inclusivity and information flow to enhance their integration and capacity in co-design and co-implementation towards sustainable use of the coastal ocean. And of course, we'll generate comprehensive knowledge of the coastal ecosystem and the human dimension, pressurized by intensified human activity and climate change through scientific exploration to study ocean warming, pollution, eutrophication, HABs, hypoxia, and acidification to facilitate prediction of the coastal ecosystem change. Finally, hopefully we can empower effective ocean governance. We'll integrate ocean management, encompassing historical, integrated, knowledge-based, ecosystem-based, and solution-oriented approach to ensure sustainability of the coastal ecosystem. This kind of activity outcome through co-design of the science we need, through, again, historical analysis, new observation, numerical modeling, human ocean coupling analysis, to deliver the ocean we want. And we are meeting the UN Decade SDG goal of 13, the climate action, life 14, life below water, and the 17, the partnership to achieve the goal. The approach, as I said, we're doing the diagnosis, attribution, and the modeling, and the solution. Again, the key of this project is try to integrate cross-system analyze, unifying the protocol and the methodology among the 6 model system, so we can stay on the same page to co-design and co-deliver of the science. I just give you some of the flavor slideshow, this kind of showing the multi-dimensional observation through field observation, remote sensing. And we are going to develop the numerical models, the cross scale, the coupled by geochemical physical model, and the coastal environment socioeconomic synthesis modeling. And finally, Faye is going to introduce a digital twin ocean, try to visualize based on the data and the model to provide a very powerful tool for decision making. So the expected outcome of these coastal S, again, a novel strategy of cross-sector partnership, a problem-driven and solution-oriented observation network data platform, and finally, a decision-making support system. So I stop here with that, and hope you can get an overview of this project. Yahweh, get back to you.
Thanks, Minghan, for a very thorough introduction of the project. So our next speaker will be Professor Fei Cai from Second Institute of Oceanography. He will give a talk from observations and modeling to digital twin ocean.
Hello,
Professor Fei.
Good afternoon. So my talk will focus on the natural science part of it, mainly focusing on the observations, modeling to digital twin ocean. So this is, again, the 6 coastal systems. And as Minghan said, they're really, from the natural science point of view, it has a common approach. That is observations, the modeling to the integration between the data and the modeling results to a social economic informations and come up with different scenarios. I have 10 minutes, and then I will just talk about those 3 subjects and then give you some recommendations and then the thinking from very beginning. And then I will show you a few examples by the end. So the number one task is really this, the inventory assessment and the gap analysis to see what we have, and then from the historical, the observational, the data sets, and then through the gap analysis to see current the technical capabilities. And then the co-design observing systems, we need to have a clear goal and objectives. Who are the users? What those informations for? I think we have to change the mind in some way, not only for the scientific understanding, but also for the solving the social economic problems. So multiple source of observations, we need to design, come up a standard, and then have a best practices. And then, in other words, share the successful stories from one system to the others. This remote sensing data really need to be consolidated and standardized. In situ data is very difficult and hard to put them together, but the remote sensing data and then should be consolidated and standardized for all this. I will show you one example of this part. And then, so the modeling part, as Minghan said, we need to talk about a multi-scale modeling approach from the land, the river estuary, the coastal open ocean, not only the physics, but also the biogeochemistry, the ecosystem part. The model simulation and development has to be closely linked with the data and then to improve the model. But we also need to come up a operational forecasting, like a weather forecasting for the ocean, for the different community group users. So the digital twin ocean is really a framework that connecting the data, the information, the modeling results through the visualization, and also a collection of the new set of tools and technology to analyze and access to the big data through the machine learning, artificial intelligence, high performance computing. It enables the users and partners to use this platform and run different scenarios and then come up away with the solution and understanding for their own. So it's less reliable on the experts in some way. I think this is the part. That also established this global shared, easy to use the platforms for the different user groups, communities, because there are other funded UN decade programs that just focus on this. So we need to take advantage of it. This is the one example Minghan used, that is, we can get those informations like a fertilizer consumption. But if you look at the lower panel, that even the nutrient data is unevenly observed and distributed among those 6 model systems. Not only this nutrient part, the oxygen, the pH, the harmful algal blooms, the data is really hard to collect and then standardize. I think one of the challenges for this coastal SOS is to enhance and improve the observing capabilities for all the systems. But the good news is the satellite observational capability. And then there is one particular platform we call the CYCLE, this is the address. We think this is a one-stop shop for all the satellite data. It covers more than 20 satellites over 30 years, and we process them all together. We have done so many trainings, and there's so many user groups overseas. So we plan to do that for the coastal SOS part. So give you a couple of examples. This is the project I led for the last 5 years. We consolidate all the observing systems for the China coastal regions from Bohai Sea, East China Sea to South China Sea, with all the observing system, but also with a high resolution physical, biological models. And then we try to focus on the coastal eutrophication and hypoxia, etc. One of the products, and through this, you have to link the model development, physical, biological models with long-term observations to understand the sources, the cause of the coastal hypoxia for the Yangtze River. For example, the nutrient delivered from the Yangtze River cause the diatoms blooms, and then which will sink to the bottom, consume the oxygen. But this is a kind of traditional one-dimensional looking, but it's the strong currents. And then they take those blooms further downstream and then they deposit the materials at the different locations. You need to consider all this together. One of the products of this is you can establish the forecasting systems. So we can forecast 7 days ahead of time and the environmental conditions, temperature, the hypoxia, the nutrients, and then etc. So with those forecast systems, we can issue the hypoxia warning for the different regions that the policymakers and then can take proper action to minimize the impact. So this is one of the usage. But similarly, for the other systems, so this is the slides from the colleagues from Malaysia. So they also use the physical models, the RAMs, the same model we use. They do the handcast the last 20 years, but it's only for the physics. It has not got into the biogeochemistry yet. And they also issue 5 days forecast, and then you can see the website only for the physics. I think with this project, we can collaborate and to implement the ecosystem part. For the upper Gulf of Thailand, there are also the hypoxia, right tides, and cause the fish, that, etc. But it's important economically for this region, yet the observing systems has not been fully established. I think through this project, through the sharing of the technology, we can establish a new observing systems, refine them. And so those are the examples. I leave you with some final thoughts. And then number one, the multiple source of information need to develop the standard, best practice, share the successful stories. The technology development, the innovation are the key for integrating the systems, but we need to lower the cost for autonomous observing platforms and sensors. The linkage between the remote sensing is very, very important, better with the modern communities. The digital twin ocean is the framework, need to be incorporated, standardized for all this coastal SOS sites, and then need to close coordination with other programs. And I think the capacity building, the trainings is also important. And then, so I stop here.
Thanks, Professor Tsai, for his very excellent talk. So our next speaker will be Professor Dabo Guan from Tsinghua University. He will talk about the human dimensions of coastal SOS. Professor Guan.
Thank you very much. Oh, let me open this. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dabo Guan from Tsinghua University. I'm gonna share some thoughts about our during the preparation of the coastal SOS project, how this human and nature nexus can be established. So it's more coming from the human dimension of the Coastal SOS project. A little bit of background. So basically, the ocean itself is an ecological system, but it have a service to the human dimensions. So we want to achieve the blue economy, and this is the human has already polluted and contaminated the ocean and use the resources. Possibly already destroyed many of the resources already. The marine related GDP in the recent few years globally has kept relatively stable, but in the developing countries, especially in China or the South Asian countries, the marine related GDP has growing up quite rapidly. On the other hand, the coastal area has been very vulnerable to be affected by a kind of extreme events like storm surge or other things. The economic loss usually is quite heavy, and that's interpreted as the resilience of the economic system in the coastal area is quite weak. There's lots of the literature talk about how do we achieve or build the blue economy, which is trying to reconcile the trends in the biophysical state of the ocean, which we are relying on, maintain the opportunity for future well-being for humankind, and enable the emerging the opportunity for the ocean production to actually to enhance the future or the current well-being for the human development. There's a lot of challenges when we study this, especially when we link the human dimension or in specifically the socio-economic system with the ocean system. There's not only the modeling difficulties, as Professor Chai was just talking about, also data and mechanisms are not crystally clear. There's a lack of a basic data for the accounting system, and the mechanisms for the marine system and the economic system, including the greenhouse gas emission systems, is all pretty not very clear. And the assessment, comprehensive assessment. So as I said, so we have some foundations about emissions database for 300 cities. Based on that, we're actually trying to look for more than CO2 emissions, but more extending to nutrient footprint emissions. So we started this ammonia at first, the NH4, so as a typical pollutant for the ocean contaminations. So we're trying to for the first time to look at trying to build up the nutrient footprint accounting system at the provincial and the city level in China, and trying to find the means for the nutrient pollution in the Chinese coastal areas and what socio-economic activities are linked with that. So we firstly look at the about 30 different cities along these Pearl River delta. And to look at what will be the consequences for the ocean coastal areas in the area. On the globally, we are actually starting to build the socio-economic database for the global emerging economies, is basically the developing countries. Also trying to look at not only for the carbon footprint for those countries or the regions, but also look at their nutrient or the ocean related footprint. So the basic outline for this global trade socio-economic database is 425 economic bodies, including all the countries in the world, and then plus many regions, and 100 breakdown by 135 sectors. That has a very detailed socio-economic sectors. This is allow us identify, try to target which sector or which activity is the key for the key driving forces for the relevant nutrient pollutions there. So by using those basic data tools, we are about to expand them for the marine economic input-output model. So the traditional 100, like this 135, whatever sector we talk about, sector, but we trying to look at the marine activities that need to further disaggregation for those socio-economic activities. Therefore, we trying to expand the marine economic sectors by 18 different marine sectors and by different national, coastal, and city level on these things. So those work are undergoing, and that would provide the data foundation for future analysis. So let me just escape that. So already has some output. One of the papers had already published this year about the how did we build up those marine-based economic input-output models, and then what's the city level or in these coastal cities in those different zones, and those papers is already published in the environmental science and technologies. Finally, let me just say a few words about the sustainability index, which we trying to look to build up, and hopefully we can use that index to measure the sustainability or even the resilience for the coastal areas, coastal zones. So the approach we propose to use is called Inclusive Wealth Index. It's firstly proposed by the United Nations in 2012. We have expanding that and now studied about 200 cities, over 200 Chinese cities there, including many coastal areas and many coastal cities. And that actually included the human capitals, the production capitals, also resource capitals, which is the environmental related. And in the coastal areas, lots of the resource capital is a key input for their socio-economic development and well-being improvement. So we trying to look at those to measure the those index city by city, and then trying to hopefully can apply further to the international studies in these coastal SOS projects. Finally, basically, we want to promote do the policy guidance kind of research, which is we work with the scientists, also the policy stakeholders, trying to co-design what will be the policy oriented project and how our research would contribute to the management frameworks and the decision tools. Thank you very much. I stop here. Thank you. Yawei, it's over to you now.
Thanks, Double. It's
Yeah, we lost you. But anyway, we can continue.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm being sorry, I'm being kicked out from a Zoom. I don't know why, but I use another computer. And so our next speaker will be our representative from industry sector, Mr. Simon Bennett from China Navigation. He will give us his ideas from industry perspectives.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us to talk at this impressive and distinguished forum. We are honored to have been asked to help contribute to this very worthy project. It's very important. The more we understand the ocean atmosphere interface, the better we will be at sea, and the better the coastal communities will be able to adapt and mitigate the more energetic climate that's heading our way. On the assumption that you can see my screen.
Yes, Simon. Can you play the PPT? Yeah.
Okay. So the company I work for was established 149 years ago. Hang on a minute. This is some of our ships on the Shanghai Bund on the Yangtze River. And today the family is very intimately involved with our growth and opportunities, which is why we still have the family behind us, and they are very keen that we support scientific projects like this. There's 5 sectors within the group as a whole. It includes Cathay Pacific, which is of course 1/3 owned by Air China, and the China Navigation Company, which was renamed at the beginning of this year when we split between liner shipping, which is like containers, and bulk shipping. So to be able to distinguish the two. We own and operate around 50 vessels. It changes all the time, making 2,500 port calls a year in 55 countries, mainly in this area here, the Pacific. This is probably the most important slide I'm going to show you in the 10 minutes I have. We have 14 different trades servicing the Pacific islands, countries, and territories, but you can see we service a lot of ports in Japan and China, all the way down to Australia, and then the Pacific Islands. We've worked with a number of different scientific projects. We've worked with the National Oceanographic Centre in the UK, the University of Southampton, for 10 years, collecting meta-ocean data as we crisscross the Pacific here, because these are generally very underreported routes. These are not the trunk routes for containers from America to China, China to Europe. So this enables, and we also obviously cross the southern oscillation zone, so we can track temperature changes, which are bringing in El Nino or La Nina. So we're happy to help with whatever data collection you need on ships on these routes here. We started out supporting scientific projects and worthy projects in general when I went to the United Nations Environment Assembly in Nairobi. That was the first time that they had involved science, policy, and business together. And it was very obvious that this had been long overdue. The science side of things tends to produce the data about whatever the issue or the problem is. The governance area, governments create a receptive environment so that the issue can be tackled, and then business gets on and fixing it, because that's what business does. But also in so doing, we're able to collect the data observations at sea, which I believe this project will need. As Professor Chai said earlier, it's one of the sources of data which is going to be needed. This particular project that I'm showing here involved the collection of waste. There's a big problem in the Pacific that they're dumping all their waste in landfill. The tropical cyclones come through and blow the plastics into the sea, and then the small fish eat the plastics, the bigger fish eat the small fish, and the humans eat the big fish. So we provide containers for free and freight for free to take the waste out of the Pacific. We're part of the problem because we bring the stuff in, so we need to be part of the solution. We're also looking at end-of-life vehicles, which are currently just dumped along with fridges and washing machines, etc. We are going to be collecting those, crushing them, and then treating them and getting them out of the Pacific before they taint the groundwater and the coastal waters. We're trying to decarbonize, so we're looking to build a low-tech, low-carbon, low-cost inter-island sail-assisted cargo ship We're just about to order that now from a yard in Guangzhou. And we also use new technology on ships. This is not really the focus of this meeting here this afternoon. So we have supported a whole bunch of projects in the past. We're very keen to help you with this one going forward. We're not scientists. You guys are the scientists. You need to tell us what you need and give us the boxes to collect the meta-ocean data. And we're very willing to fit them on the ships and then to return the data to you from the trade routes that we are sailing on at the moment. And that's all I've got to say at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bennett. So we'll go to our last speaker before the roundtable. There will be Mr. Jian Ma from the Paradise International Foundation. He will talk about his ideas from a foundation perspective.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. It's a great honor to be invited to this COASTAL-SOS launch conference. It is a true learning opportunity for me, actually. I'm Ma Jian, the Vice President of Paradise International Foundation. The Paradise International Foundation was established in 2015, founded by 50 famous Chinese entrepreneurs and philanthropists. The core work of us is to promote the land trust areas in China. We have managed 6 land trust protected areas so far, with the support of local governments and local communities. The total managed area of us is over 600 square kilometers. We have around 100 full-time staff to carry out the patrolling and monitoring, working with local communities to balance their livelihoods and biodiversity conservation. Furthermore, to make them benefit from the conservation outcomes. From the first day of Paradise Foundation establishment, we have been thinking about how to contribute in protecting marines, because compared with land, marine plays a more important role in sustaining the human well-being and is more sensitive to threats such as climate change and pollution. It has received quite low protection efforts. So in 2016, we launched the Blue Pioneer program together with Packard Foundation from the US. The program is focusing on training young marine conservationists and encourage them to participate in marine conservation in the first line. This was the first attempt of Paradise Foundation in marine work. The Blue Pioneer program has been trained 4 cohorts, around 100 young talents right now. In 2019, after 3 years experience, we officially launched the Blue Initiative Fund, began to explore how to better fund institutions to promote marine protection. Since then, we have funded 9 projects, including marine scientific research, marine education, marine talent training, fishermen's livelihood improvement, marine think tank network, and so on. This year, we concentrate the Blue Initiative on 3 funding directions, which is marine protected areas establishment and management, blue carbon, and capacity building to young marine talents. We believe these 3 directions are most in line with the capacity and advantage of Paradise Foundation and the needs of marine protection. I would like to take this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you on COASTAL-SOS. So coastal zone is a fusion zone of land and marine system, and you know better than me. It has very high ecological significance. In addition, more than half of the world population lives near the coast, and they create more than 60% of human wealth. Moreover, in the current context of climate change, the coastal zone is also the most vulnerable and serious affected areas. Therefore, from the perspective of Paradise Foundation, we feel that scientific research and the protection actions in this area are extremely important. I believe everyone in this meeting has a consensus. We are all aware that NGOs have developed rapidly in China in recent years. According to the statistics of the Ministry of Civil Affairs, there are more than 900,000 NGOs and more than 150 billion RMBs of charitable donations in China in 2020. NGOs played and is playing an important role in the whole society. In the past 5 years, China's total charitable donation for biodiversity protection reached 1.8 billion RMB and 69 goes to environment protection. It is the largest and the fastest growing field. However, it only accounts for less than 1% of China's overall charitable donations. At the same time, we need to aware the number of marine NGOs is still small concerning the scale of staff and annual spending. In 2018, there were only 202 marine environmental protection organizations in China, of which 80% of them have no more than 6 staff. Meanwhile, NGOs engaged in marine conservation work have a very small coverage of topics and a high degree of homogenizations. More than 80% of the institutions focus on marine garbage treatment and nature education. But we still cannot ignore the importance of marine NGOs in biodiversity conservation. Not only funds, they have brought new ideas and practices. Many of them insist on taking root in front line and effectively build a bridge between the governments, enterprises, academia, the public, and the local communities. We have seen the great role played by NGO parties in protecting terrestrial ecosystem, so we have the same reason to believe that marine NGOs will play the same role in the near future. So I hope the Coastal SOS program could engage more NGO parties in the implementation. So finally, congratulations on the official launch of Coastal SOS. We also look forward to working closely with Professor Dai's team to achieve all the goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ma, and all the other speakers today. So our next event is a virtual launch ceremony for the Coastal SOS. So we'll see a video.
Let's all give them props.
Very cool.
Cool, thanks.
Probably we now we need to take a group photo virtually. So can everyone open your camera and we can quickly get a group picture and then we go to the next step.
Screenshot, yeah. Please show yourself up. Thank you all again to join this long session. We need a picture, group picture. Hopefully we can gather in person at some point next year.
Sure.
Everyone, please put your camera on so we can get a screenshot. Are we ready?
One, let's say everyone cheers. Okay.
Oh.
1, 2, 3, cheers. Just hold on a second. We have to, because we are too many people and we can't just a screenshot for one picture. We have to do that.
Couple of screen, yeah.
Are you all set?
Yeah.
Just hold on for one more second.
Now I see familiar faces. Yeah, thank you all again. Are we done yet? Are we?
Yes. Okay, we're here. We'll finish it. Oh, all right. Thank you, everyone. So now I will give my mic virtually to Professor Green Williams to chair the dialogue, the round table dialogue. So, William, it's yours.
Thank you, Yahweh. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. Yahweh, do we still have 45 minutes? Yes, from the timer we obviously do. So ladies and gentlemen, a big welcome to the roundtable discussion part of this meeting. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gray Williams. I'm from the Swire Institute of Marine Science at the University of Hong Kong. And today what we've done is we've drawn together a panel of people from various different disciplines representing different sectors of the proposal, but also different countries. So I think it fulfills many of the things which Min Han pointed out were quite unique to this project. So if I could just introduce the panelists first, and then we can kick off. So we have Joseph Chu. Joseph, for me, is on the top left of my, my picture. He's from Liangchen Overseas Fishery Group from Shenzhen, and he'll be representing that sector of the different group. We have Professor Jianpeng Gan. Jianpeng is Gan's from the University of Science, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. We have Lili. Lili's in the center of my screen, I can see. She's from the Deputy Executive Director of SOLAS, that's the Surface Ocean Lower Atmosphere Study Group, and she's based in Xiamen. We have Phak Im Lim, and Phak Im, she is representing the University of Malaya, Professor Phak Im Lim. And then last but by no means least, we have Dato BJ Tan from the Jeffy Aquatech Resources group, Malaysia Aquaculture Processing as well. So you can see we have a very diverse set of members, which I think represent the spread and the diversity of the group, which has been assembled for Coastal SOS. And so the idea today is we're just going to generate a dialogue where we can discuss some of the issues about coastal SOS, some of the dreams and aspirations, and also some of the challenges it faces. So we prepared a series of questions, which I will now put towards the panelists, and we can start the dialogue from that area. So to start off with, ladies and gentlemen, the first question is looking about the philosophy of the partnership. And so we're trying here to create a synergy between science, industry, policy, and management disciplines to create a more sustainable ocean. Obviously, that's quite a challenge. So one of the first thoughts are, what cross-sectorial partnerships do you consider are crucial for achieving a sustainable ocean future, and why? Why are those particular ones important? So I'll throw that open to the panelists, and whichever one of you would like to start the discussion, we can follow on from there.
Yeah, great.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I think that as mentioned by Gray as well as Professor Dai, that's actually the philosophy behind the project is quite challenging as it involves multi-sectors. But the thing is, we know that the cooperation of the different sectors are very important for sustainable ocean future. We can't left out any of the sector in order to achieve the ocean that we want. Firstly, we need a science-based finding, which is contribution from the research institution to understand the challenges that the ocean are facing, as well as provide the possible mitigation plan and solution. However, we know that the current stage of the ocean, the challenges that we are facing, such as eutrophication, HAB, pollution, hypoxia, and etc., are due to human activity and natural forces. So, but for sustainability of economic growth, we can't stop the development. Hence, the collaboration from cross-sectoral between academia and industry are very important. The academia may assist in finding the main factor in causing the pressure on the ocean, and active communication with industry is needed to share the finding and propose solution that we are not depriving the economic growth, but yet at the same time, we're still putting the ocean health as the main consideration. Besides that, the awareness and support of public are important, where the NGO and IGO can play a very important role in helping to do the public awareness. And we also need the policy for implementation, enforcement, and monitoring. So I would stress that, in fact, this project is actually very timely in order, and we hope through this project, we are able to bring back the health and the future ocean that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was very, very clear. Quite a lot of different points there. Would anyone else like to follow up? Joseph, perhaps.
First of all, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah. First of all, I think the context of ocean sustainability is a very wide subject. Today, it calls for a cooperation across multiple disciplines, from industry to education, from science research to government policies. But I have personally spent a good part of my career operating in a fishing business. So from my perspective, engagement with industry, or in my sector, Fishing Commission, is one of the partnerships that is highly important. To cite an example, the action and behavior of our fishermen is crucial. It contributes to the make or break of our ocean sustainability. To cite an example, because I'm in the industry, in the catching business, so I understand that certain catching method would result catching many, we call it the juvenile fish, the small baby fish. So is it really the most sustainable friendly method? This is up for discussion, but this is just one example of how I feel that directionally alignment and partnership with local or industry commission is important to drive long-term sustainability ocean.
Thank you, Joseph. I think it's very interesting to, again, this cross-sectorial approach to try and think about what different sectors bring to this actual larger project. Would any of the other panel members like to comment on that particular question, trying to think about what are the key cross-sectorial partnerships? Or maybe I'll change the question around then to almost look at a different way of thinking about this. We've sort of built this team for Coastal SOS using this approach of cross-sectorial and also multidisciplinary. But I guess the question might be to turn it around and say, well, is there anything we're missing? Are there any sectors we're missing, or any particular disciplines which we would need to actually add into the Coastal SOS team to actually boost our ability to achieve the goals which we've set?
Great. Maybe I could say that.
Please, I can see you. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So as mentioned, the coastal issues such as the eutrophication, the oxygenation, acidification, HAB, and as well as the fisheries and agriculture management, air quality, natural disasters, all these come into play to at least some extent along the entire human inhabited global coastline, but become critical in highly populated areas such as the 6 demonstration sites of Coastal SOS. And we also mentioned that the coastal oceans cover only like 7% of the global ocean surface, but they support a disproportionate fraction of ocean primary production, fisheries, and other marine ecosystem services. So there is a lot of momentum worldwide to understand and to solve the coastal issues. For example, the Joint Baltic Sea Research and Development Program, BONUS, which is an EU program, and budgeted 100 million euros to understand and to reduce the effects of man-made pollutions on Baltic, enabling sustainable exploitation of the sea and supporting the health of citizens living around it. And I think Coastal SOS is to some extent inspired by this Baltic Sea story. And another example is that SOLAS, we are a global research network which brings the scientists from both oceanic and atmospheric domains to study air-sea interactions and climate change. We're not a coastal-only project, but the SOLAS science, such as the terrestrial atmospheric inputs to the coastal oceans, gases and aerosols released from the coastal oceans, and the process that control those transport across the air-sea interfaces are crucial to understand the environmental issues of coastal zones, particularly within the context of global and climate change. And among the 40 programs and the 86 projects and endorsed by the UN Ocean Decade so far, I roughly calculated 430 of them are dedicated to study coastal zones respectively. And among the 70 Decade Action Incubator sessions at the WESTPAC kickoff conference these 2 days, half of them are about coastal zones and coastal issues. So I think for coastal ocean, for Coastal SOS, one thing we need to further think about is that how do we collaborate or coordinate with these programs and projects to make sure that the effective and efficient integration of all task forces to achieve a common goal, which is the sustainability of coastal oceans.
So actually trying to link with some of these other projects, you think is one of the areas which we should be trying to develop into the program, perhaps in stage 2, because we have a 2-stage program maybe. Does anybody else want to add on to things which we might be missing or things which we should be trying to add into Coastal SOS?
I can. Well, it is so great to see so many people attending this opening ceremony. On the record, we have a 64, and I just scroll down the people, at least 2/3 of them, I don't know. Well, this is I've been doing we have been doing this kind of the research in many years, and this is one of the quite phenomena that we are able to gather in the people from the different sectors, particularly and from the different region, different countries. in Southeast Asia. I think that this is a good sign for this SOS. In terms of the grade, the question, what we mix. Well, this is a quite comprehensive already, the project. As many you all know, there is the integrated integration of the different sectors. I think that one of the things I didn't, the component maybe, I don't see that is the relevant government agency. Those agencies actually are responsible for planning, management, and even the execution of the, the same mitigation and many other and policy making. For example, in Hong Kong, we have different government agency, Environmental Protection Department, Hong Kong, the Observatory, the AFC, the Agriculture, fishery, and so on. They are all responsible for the marine, the environment in different sectors. One HKO for, say, the storm surge, and then the other departments of fishery, and also the say the water pollution, so on. Now they are the persons, they know the maybe have some kind of issue. Of course, we also know. But as a the objective of this project, we need to integrate bridging the with the this society need in different sector. Now the government agency like us, they may have the viewed from other angles for the problem they urgently need to be addressed, challenge, society need, problem or issue regionally and locally. They are concerned in those several zones we chosen in this study. Okay, so this is the one thing I think we can have liaison, okay, with the more policy maker or the government agency. I saw the Professor Dai's PPT there already. We already have intergovernment, the agency, and including some of the, the organization. That is a good starting, but then we can invite those government stakeholders to come in. Another thing is the linkage mechanism. If we have these people in, then how are we going to effectively link different sectors together? They will involve with the, we need to have approach, mechanism, not just like this kind of meeting. Of course, this kind of meeting is one of the very important mechanism. And Professor Dai said we should get together also the next year, okay, when we have that. The second thing I wanted to talk very briefly is talking about another integration. That is scientific integration. We are interdisciplinary. We have involved with a different, subject, scientific subject, physics, biology, chemistry, and others. Okay, so we have many kind of the scientific disciplinary. Of course, this kind of integration, interdisciplinary, always is a challenging. Not only, we worldwide. Are we going to make it, into another level? Efficiency, increase the efficiency in this project is also one of our challenges. I think that this we can, together, entire group can do that. Now we also have, the not only disciplinary integration, we also have approach integration or objective orientated the task integration. We need to have model, we need to have a diagnosis, we need to have a prediction, and we also need to have a management, mitigation, and so on. This is also one of the challenges, I think. Okay, and lastly, we also have a challenge in the different regions across the Southeast Asia. We could, this SOS group, we have, the excellent group member from the different sectors. I think we can make it one of the, the good example in the, coastal ocean management research and mitigation. and under the UN this project. There are many UN decade project, but I think we should do this one. We are capable to do this one. We have competence on this one to make it one of the the highlighted one and serve the regions. Thank you. Sorry, I talked too long. All right.
No, it's very, very helpful, Gan. I think you picked up, I think there are 3 points which I think we can sort of follow on from what you mentioned to us there. And I think I'd like to start by trying to think about how we can actually make our partnerships work. I think this is one of the things you brought up quite eloquently. And I think maybe one of the first ones to think about is you mentioned about the interaction with government and policymakers. And we have an interdisciplinary team of people, all of whom will deal with different government departments. There are many government departments that deal with the oceans and coastal systems. So I wonder how we'll deal with the fact that every group is dealing with a different set of policymakers and managers, and we have to try and integrate across those different sets. Joseph, from the point of view from looking at fisheries management to looking at atmospheric, discharge, things like this. How are we going to change that language that we're going to use for those dialogues? I think that's quite a challenge for us to be able to have a common language. I think Fei Chai mentioned in his talk, we need to establish best practices and standards. But if we have a different set of language for different, these different disciplines, I think that's already quite a major challenge. How do you think we can try and overcome that? Joseph?
Sure. I think everyone has his or own personal value system. And we are living in a world of making choices and trade-offs. So the biggest challenge we face is that not everyone places the same value in protecting our ocean and the health of our planet. I think it is actually fundamentally a difficult one because action taken today does not translate into immediate dollar value. To foster and enhance partnership, we probably need to find a common ground where interests can be balanced and aligned. But at the same time, I think there's some good news that I see where I'm seeing some world leaders speaking up for climate change and making commitment around environmental sustainability. We're also seeing Fortune 500 companies leading the way in making social responsibility part of their company missions. So I think leads to the previous question is that I think we need to also think about how to educate people about sustainability so that it is a common value that carries in every human being, because all of us are connected to the ocean one way or the other.
Yeah, I think that's the educational aspect, again, is something which I think is going to be very important in terms of education, in terms, again, with these relationships with different groups and learning how to deal with people who might have different values. And I think that's another good point to think about, is the different values which people bring or perceive. For example, you mentioned, Joseph, a monetary value, which often we try to give to some of these resources. But on the other hand, not everything can be just converted simply to a money value. We also have other intrinsic values and ethical values as well, which we need to consider. So I think that's also an interesting aspect. So I'll try and stretch that a little bit further, and by thinking about the fact that one of the things we're trying to do with this Coastal SOS is to also bridge between different countries, where we're talking about Southeast Asia sort of theme, where we're working in Malaysia, Thailand, and China. I mean, we're talking about very big sort of scales where we have different model systems. And I wonder how we're going to try and integrate across these different model systems. And again, different sort of methods. As I said, we talked about best practices. Perhaps I can ask Dato if he has some opinion from an aquaculture sort of perspective on how we might be able to bridge across these different geographic areas. I was told that Dato had actually been able to log on. Unfortunately, he had a lot of problems initially trying to get into the system. So can I just ask, I was told that Dato Tan is actually online, is that correct? Maybe not. maybe not. So maybe I'll throw that open then to the general roundtable. What are we thinking about how we deal with the geographic distances? Because we're all going to be working in different areas, dealing with different areas, but different governments, etc. But we want to try and have common goals and common practices. What way can we best do that? Obviously, COVID has created a situation where traveling is no longer as easy as it used to be. So we are remote at the moment. And how do you think that we can try and develop best practices from a sort of remote angle?
I agree. So I think the first step should be like we should identify the needs of each model system, each demonstration site. Like the 6 model sites, they have different like study status, and we need to know how is current research status of their environment. And then, I mean, for the developing areas, countries, we need to, like, if they do have some needs for the financial resources, we should like have a strategy to help them out. I think that's the first step. And then, and I fully agree with you that the different sectors, they have their own languages. So we should definitely learn each other's languages to foster and enhance the partnerships. This is not easy, but I think it could be achieved by a well-designed organization structure and the efficient coordination and communication strategy. And since the PAMC is absent today, maybe I could say a few words about them. Like Gan just mentioned that we need to approach policymakers, and actually PAMC, they has a network for local governments and authorities, which contains regular like 50 members from 10 countries. And this is, I think, is the current linkage of COASTAL-SOS with policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you. That's, I think, a good point. Gan, did I see you waving there? Sorry.
I'm moving. I didn't wave it.
Just checking you're still alive. That's good.
Okay, thanks.
So I think that's one of the interesting points that you made about was trying to establish baselines, I guess, between the different regions in terms of what we already know. And I think maybe that's something which is a good starting point, is to establish those baselines from the different areas which we'll be working with. And that might allow us also to become more familiar with the environments in terms of not just the physical environment or the biological environment, but also the political and the management environment of the different groups. Because I think each group is going to have to act within those different regions from that sort of point of view. So I think that's also a good thing to try and think about. And I think that's one of the things when we're thinking about these sort of cross-sectorial, but also international relationships of how we can try and do that. I'd like to go now and try to think a little bit more about these sort of cross-sector ideas as well. And so I want to think about how the COASTAL-SOS project, one of the key questions is how we work together. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make smart business decisions. So that's one area, but we want to base those on solid scientific evidence. That's very important. And then have them enacted into policy and management. And so that sort of combination of smart business, solid science, and then policy and management, often we find out that there are sometimes conflicts. I think Joseph started to highlight some of these areas where we try to find out, different values these groups might have. So I think one of the real big challenges is how do you think we can manage this sort of juggling act of trying to do these sort of three things? We're trying to find the ways that we identify the drivers, then we provide solutions which then go into management and policy. How can we try and juggle any potential conflicts which we might have between business decisions, for example, and science, and then how it's translated into policy? How do you think we might try and manage some of those issues?
Perhaps I can step in since it seems to relate to my previous related comment, I think in summary, I think mutual trust, respect, and understandings are crucial. And across all parties, we constantly need to work hard toward eliminate any ambiguity, assumptions, and misunderstanding. Those are the main driver that always resulted in conflicts. That's why, to me, I think I've also highlighted to Professor Gray before that I think an open and transparent communication is the foundation. It's the foundation. So I think we need to identify the right resources to facilitate such communication. Because people like from different areas, like myself, I'm not a scientist, so do not speak. So a lot of time, cross sectors or cross industry do not speak the same language. So we need to be able to find that, for example, a good communicator who are able to articulate scientific knowledge and ideas in layman's terms, or we need a good moderator who understand how put policies and business decisions together. So communication, I think, is the foundation to avoid conflicts.
Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, we discussed that earlier, didn't we? And I think one of the terms you were very clear on was transparency. That if we all are very transparent about how we deal with each other, then I think that becomes a lot easier to understand, but also to avoid potential conflicts. I think that's one of the areas. And I think, again, you touched on the importance of communication in terms of not just, I think it's also an education, letting people know how the business sector views these issues and then how scientists do, which then helps us, I think, to better understand each other. I think that's a good point. Would any of the panelists like to comment on that, trying to avoid these conflicts between the different sectors?
Great, maybe I can contribute. Okay, so I think that Joseph have pointed out the communications and the sharing a core value that is very important. I would like to echo on that. And I think that the most important thing is we must have active communication. I think that's throughout the implementation of the project. I think the different sector, we ought to have a regular meeting and output to share the results so that they understand right from beginning, so that everyone have the sense of ownership. And right from beginning, we will start to adopt the same core value that we know that the same core value, we hope to have a healthy ocean. So I think that is very important. And also not to left out like what Champing says, that's the government and the local agency is very important, because eventually whatever output and solution that we come out with, we need that to be incorporated in the policy for implementation and also for implementation. So I think if every sectors that are involved right from beginning, I think then we will have a smoother integration to integrate inside the policy, and in hope that we can implement whatever suggestion and solution that based on the output of the COASTAL-SOS project. So thank you for me.
So I think that's a nice point, which maybe we should be thinking is about when we're starting the project now. If we can establish these core values at this stage, then perhaps we can avoid potential conflicts, because we can have a very clear dialogue to know what everybody's expecting and what everybody will be able to bring to the table. So I think that's actually a very useful point to bring across that. The other thing which I was thinking about was that, this project is very innovative for this region, but I think Lily mentioned that there are other programs which have done some of these things, and maybe we should also be looking for their experiences. Has anyone been involved in any of this sort of large-scale programs which have tried to achieve all these goals, or maybe some of them? I think, Lily, did you mention some of the PEMC programs which might be involved in sort of parts of this area?
There are several UN Ocean Decade endorsed programs and projects, like the one led by the City University of Hong Kong, which is called GAMP, and another one is led by the State Laboratory of Eastern and Coastal Studies in China. It's called meta delta, and also there are like so many projects endorsed by UN Ocean Decade, around 15, something like that. They are looking at the coastal zones. Yes, I think it's not only about the internal communication within the coastal SOS, but we should like set up a regular communications strategy with the people outside, with other projects.
What about projects which are perhaps not even in the region, like EU projects or things like this? Because I think a number of those also try and cross disciplines as well. And so maybe we should also be looking to build up an advisory team, perhaps, of people who have been dealing with these sorts of things before. Do you think that that would be useful for us?
Yes, I think that's definitely help. Like the EU project bonus, they spent, as I said, they spent like 100 million euros to study the Baltic Sea, but still there are some environmental problems like the hypoxia in the bottom layer are still there. So we should definitely learn from their experiences, and we should avoid things like that in our studies.
Yeah, I see we have a hand up from Zheng Guangzhou. Is that correct? Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, Williams. Thanks for letting me
Please
jump in. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's fine. It's good.
Actually, my point is now I'm currently working for WWF China as the ocean practice manager. But before that, I'm working for GF UNDP project for yellow sea large marine ecosystem. Due to time short, I cannot share my experience for that project, UNDP project. But my point is, we can learn the other project like UNDP project, ocean, especially for the ocean project, because they're dealing with multi-stakeholders like Ministry of Natural Resources, Biofisheries, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environmental, different ministries in the central government level, also in the local level, because dealing with ocean in China, as you said before, we have dealing with multi-stakeholders. We not only need science, but also need to the policymakers. Sometimes, as Joseph said, we speak different languages, but at least in some point, we need to lower ourselves to better to achieve our goal for the healthy ocean. That's my point. That's my point, is to learn the other UNDP project in China, whether it's failure or whether it has progress. I would like to share more my experience later. Thank you, Williams.
Okay, thank you for joining and adding that. That's very helpful to think about the UNDP projects as well and sustainability issues, I think. Any other comments on that area in terms of trying to seek some experience, I guess, from other groups, which then I've just actually heard from the other panelists. Unfortunately, he hasn't got a stable connection at the moment. Okay, so he's actually Dato Chan has made actually typed his actual replies here, so I'll actually read those out here. So he says that they believe to improve the aquaculture activities and reduce the fishing activities of the coastal sea, that seafood is one of the main sources of proteins for humans. Due to the increase of the human population in the world, the demand for seafood protein is increasing. So I think these are the values which he was talking about from the aquaculture area. And he says, in order to protect the coastal area from high volume of fishing activity in the future, we have to increase the supply of the seafood through aquaculture activities. So if I'm reading what Dato Tan's saying here, he's saying that this is, I think, a role that aquaculture will be able to play to try and alleviate some of the issues, some of the drivers, I think, of the processes which are discussed by the Coastal SOS project can be actually addressed through a sort of aquaculture approach from that point of view. And I guess then we end up with the same questions about this integration, because of course there are issues with aquaculture as well, which can lead to sort of, if you like, a sort of circular driver of some of these eutrophic issues, I think. So thank you, Dato. I hope I sort of summarized that. I tried to very quickly read your response there, which came through on the chat. Just one moment, I think I've got a reply. This is really using all the, yes, thanks, I've just picked that up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so I'd just like to ask, are there any sort of further comments on those questions which we can follow up on? Because I have a last question to put to all the panel members, but is there anything else the panel members would like to bring up at this stage? I think everyone's sort of dealt with those issues. Before I open it to the floor, perhaps I'll just throw out the last question. So when we prepared the roundtable, we decided to have one final question that all the roundtable panelists would be asked, if you like, as a sort of dream. So the final question, which we were all asked, is what is the one thing that you would like to see happen as a result of COASTAL-SOS? And I suggest it's not just the panel members that might like to think about this. I think this is a good question for all the participants to start to think about now. You know, what is the one thing perhaps which we would all like to see coming out as a result of the COASTAL-SOS project? So I'll invite the panel members first, and then perhaps we can also get other members of the group who are listening to contribute as well. So panel members, would you like to tell me what your one dream would be from the COASTAL-SOS project? Just put your hand up if you'd like to go first. Gan,
well,
you were first.
It's quite easy. I borrowed the one, okay, from the science we need, the ocean we want. I think this is the, you know, I hope that at the end of this project, we can, advance in the science, and then we can build a better ocean environment for for the region, find a solution and mitigation, even the management skill. Okay, so this is my one thing in my.
So Gan, you were saying to advance the scientific knowledge base, is that correct?
Well, then application, and then for the application for the management mitigation of the ocean. So the sentence will be that Professor Dice, science we need for the ocean we want. Okay, so basically, I just elaborated it.
Yeah, I think that catchphrase is excellent. Yeah, the science we need for the ocean we want. Okay, so Gan is following the catchphrase. What about the other panel members? What would you like to suggest? Joseph.
I can, yes. So all of us live in the present, I think holds the key to all our future generations, right? So I hope that I want the world to be a healthier place for my son, of course. Of course, there are many more generations to come. So I hope that one day, if we have to phrase it in one sentence, is that environmental sustainability will simply become part of all our human beings' DNA.
That's a pretty big challenge, but a great one to try and achieve.
Yeah.
Excellent, great. So we have now Lily or Fakim who would like to go next.
Yeah.
Looks like Lily's on there. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So for me, I mean, no matter what challenges we are facing or we are faced with, we are going to be able to find our way out or innovate our way out as long as we work together, we collaborate with each other. So I think that is not only the disaster movies told us so, but it has been demonstrated, I mean, thousands of times during the history of humankind. So now the climate tipping points are approaching and the environmental crises are increasing. So for COASTAL-SOS, I really hope it will set a model, set an example, demonstrating that how we can win the race via these cross-sectoral partnerships and collaborations.
Great, thank you very much, Lily. The last one. This is going to be great.
Okay. So I hope that through COASTAL-SOS, we are able to have a pristine ocean for all. I know it's not easy, but we are able to come out with the solution to strike balance between economic growth and environmental health. So this is what I hope. Thank you.
Excellent. I think that's a really good sort of summary. I like the fact that there were all slightly different ideas there, and I think that shows us the diversity of the group. So I'd like to thank the panelists for their time, but also for opening different directions of conversation. I think this is the whole point of Coastal SOS. And I discussed with Min Han, and I think it's appropriate that at the end of this opening ceremony that we should ask Min Han to be able to sort of summarize what we've learned, what we've done, and to think about the future. So Min Han, would you like to close off the remaining part of the roundtable discussion? You have 3 minutes, so there's the challenge for you, Min Han.
Thank you so much, Greg, and all the panelists and all the participants as well, and to join this unusual and unique ceremony for the launch of the Coastal SOS. We've been hearing quite a bit from different sectors, different perspectives. I think Coastal SOS is challenging, and there is a challenge in 3 dimensions. One is the science, because we are doing the multidisciplinary, cross-discipline science and the research. And we are articulate cross-sectoral partnership. And then finally, we are cross-region. There's a challenge. So the challenge are real. And I think the issue occurred to the coastal ocean are also real. At the same time, we cannot wait. We cannot wait to resolve all the scientific issue or business issues or management issue until we understand everything to work together. So the key point I want to deliver, I've been very positive and optimistic that we can take actions. And we can take actions by building this interface, not only between the science and the policy, but also the science and the users, that's business sectors. I'm particularly honored, pleased with this Coastal SOS has brought in these industry sectors, because I truly believe they are the user of the ocean eventually. So bring them in this Coastal S is a critically important view, although the interface has not been yet established, but we are going to do that. So the action we're taking to build up this interface, and with all these catalyzers from foundations and non-governmental, governmental, I think it's extremely important. Although as we heard about the challenge, different language between the different sectors, but along with the effective communication, I think we can do it. The third point I want to make is we are crossing different regions. So we need to build up the local community, the local synergized community across the science, industry sector, and the policy foundation. And also we need to build up the local capacity to take care of their home and neighboring oceans. That's the key and my philosophy to proceed this Coastal SS. Finally, I think we're meeting together, but Coastal SOS is an open system. So I'm hoping very much we can bring in more foundation, more industrial partners, and more governmental sector. People also mentioned that. And even the next generation of the scientists, actually for this purpose, we are forming a youth science committee for Coastal SOS. That's exactly the purpose, try to embed the eco DNA to our next generation and enhance their leadership to work across the sector. With that, I thank you all very much again, and it was a great event. I think it's a milestone for launching the Coastal as a unique program, at least to myself. Thank you all. Great, I let you close the session, or?
I think effectively, Minhan, that was a perfect way of closing it. I think that was just what we were looking for. I think does Yowei want to say anything about? Do we have any other information we need to share with the participants?
No, I don't have any further information. But today is a very good meeting, and we have a very good start. And as the COASTAL-SOS International Project Office, we will prepare more materials sent to world partners and to follow up.
All right.
All right.
Then I will close this session, and thank you all very much again. We hope to see you meet in person at some point and work together for COASTAL-SOS and the other UN Decade endorsed program. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.